Welcome to the Pursuit of Value podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Hamaker. There's a lot of noise out there in the business world. There's a lot of advice and a lot of theory. But at the end of the day, business is built on people, decisions, and how well you can actually execute. My guest today is Anthony Nix, owner of Transformative Sales Systems. Anthony works directly with companies navigating growth, especially when they're not quite ready for a full-time sales leader, but can't keep operating without one. We'll start by getting to know Anthony today and his background, and then get into when fractional leadership actually makes sense for a company and why most sales plans fall apart without structure and accountability. Anthony, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just jump in. And for those who may not know you, just give me a little bit about your background, your history, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I am a mechanical engineer by schooling, and an accidental salesperson. So what I mean by that is I came out of school and went to work in manufacturing, and in quality assurance and operations, those types of things. And I did that for, about 10 years. And then I got an opportunity to work on the commercial side and started working down in Mexico. This is not long after NAFTA was signed, and that giant sucking sound that was predicted happened, and all of these facilities popped up, along the border, right, the maquiladoras. And so I started my sales career down there, working with those folks, and decided that I found that much more interesting and fun to do, and made my move over into the commercial world, and then spent the next. So this was around late 90s, early 2000s, and that's what I've been doing since. And in the last 3 years, I've taken all of that experience and stuff that I gained, processes I created, and things that I learned, and started my company, Transformative Sales Systems.
So what industry was that? Did you start in?
So I started off in powdered metal technology.
Okay.
So literally taking powdered iron, nickel, chromium, whatever the elemental mix was, and under pressure, pushing it into a specific shape, might be a gear or something like that.
Yeah.
High temp centered, and then you end up with a fully a metal component that started off as powder, and that was kind of where I launched my career. A very interesting technology.
So mechanical engineer, sales, those typically aren't hand in hand. I've in the world that I live in, I deal a lot with mechanical engineers, and I would say that the stretch from mechanical engineer to a really good salesman is a big stretch. So what do you think about that?
It absolutely can be. And I'll tell you where I think, for me, I took the right exit or off ramp and was able to be successful. And it was mostly because of, as an engineer, you think about things in steps and in processes and in, this linear progression of things happening in steps. And when I went into the sales side, I didn't realize it at the time. It took me a few years before I understood why I was as successful as I was as an individual contributor. But it was because of that. It was because I would establish a process for myself with kind of, I call them now stage gates, right? And milestones I needed to reach as I pushed through a particular opportunity or working with a client on a project. And ultimately, that was what my success was. Now, is every engineer capable of going and doing that? Well, they could if they really wanted to. But some of it also has to do with, I look a lot at assessing salespeople when I'm working with clients, and there's just some internal makeup. There's mindset, self-limiting
Yeah.
beliefs, all of these different things that either can
Personality.
help or
Yeah.
hurt a person.
Yeah.
And luckily, I just seem to have the right combination back in those days to be reasonably successful.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. And you're talking about sales process, which guys that are typically natural sales, not engineers, sales process can be hard for them. So that's
Oh
interesting.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's absolutely true, and the way they're built, right?
Mm-hmm.
The hunter, especially the hunters, um, process, detail, things like that, just drive them
Yuck.
crazy, right? And and so that's where a guy like me or someone from my company kind of helps bridge that divide, because we
Sure.
do understand the way a person like that's wired, right? And that how can we make the system as non-onerous as possible so that
Right.
that hunter can be really successful, but yet
Sure.
give management the things they need and get them to follow a process.
Yeah, man, that's in my world, I deal with stuff like that all the time. There's always that
Yeah,
friction, that tension. In fact, just this
there
week
is.
I've been dealing with it just
Yeah.
over just over expense reports. So funny.
Oh
Um,
goodness. Yeah. Well, they
yeah,
hate filling those out too.
they do. They do. What do you mean I got to tell you where I was? Look at my calendar. Okay. So just describe for me, how would you describe what you do today? So with your business, give me a one or two sentence what you do today.
So we help small and medium-sized businesses bridge the gap between an owner-led sales team, or someone in leadership that's supposed to be taking care of the sales team but also has six other things they're doing,
Right.
and we kind of slide in between there. And so we're in between the owner or leadership or the CEO, maybe it's been put in place, and the sales team. We develop and understand what their goals are. Is this are we simply a lifestyle business and we just want to spin off a certain amount of cash, or
Mm-hmm.
are we at the high end? We're trying to get the business ready for potentially a PE acquisition or
Right.
some kind of a sale, and now we're trying to build value and those types of things. So it can be anywhere in between, but it's just when there is a gap between top end management, the C suite, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and a sales team, and really helping to put in the processes and systems, cadences that need to be there for a
Yeah.
sales team to really be effective and successful.
This is, since you're talking about it, but it might be a little off topic. What I found is that the difference between a lifestyle business and a growth business is exactly what you're talking about, and putting in those processes, making sure
Yeah.
that there's a continuity. If one employee leaves, how does another one step in to
Right.
take over that sales role? And what's ironic is there's a lot of companies out there that are really good companies that believe that they're not a lifestyle business. Like
Yep.
in their mind, they're a growth business, and they're gonna
Yep.
sell it for 10x and all this stuff. And then you look internally at the processes, and you're like, maybe not. I
Yeah.
think there's some work to do here. So that's really cool, because a lot of people not only don't understand the difference between the two, but they don't understand how to go from a lifestyle to a growth business. And it's
Yeah.
the growth businesses that get sold for multiples upon multiples.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, I just had lunch yesterday with a gentleman that is in that space, helping those businesses, get ready for or execute
Mm-hmm.
a sale. And we were just talking about um, waiting. His comment was, "I need to come into the business 5 or 10 years before to help get them ready." Right? It's kind of the same thing for what we do, getting those
Right.
processes in place, getting a pipeline built, getting continuity in that process to get it ready for a sale, instead of waiting 12 months before I'd like to exit and take my
Right.
millions and go and
Right.
enjoy an island somewhere. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I could talk for days on this. I've met some business owners that from the onset, they realized it's like, one day I want to sell this. So therefore today I'm going to have audited financials. I'm going to set up process. I'm
Yeah.
going to build an org chart that is solid and firm and that is I can, take and add to it. And so from the very beginning, they built this blueprint to scale because one day in the future they saw that they were going to sell it. And then there's other guys that are just like, you know what, I'm just gonna work, And
Yeah.
the companies that actually sold for millions upon millions, it's because they had the vision in the beginning, and it
Yep.
wasn't a pain in the rear for them to do the process or to set up things.
Yep.
It was, they knew that day would come one day, or they could pass it down or sell it to a private equity, whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Absolutely
those
right.
people listening, those business owners listening, take heed because it makes a difference, right?
It does for sure. Yeah.
Right on. So next question. You've worked with owner-led companies. What is the biggest blind spot you see when founders try to lead sales themselves?
Well, I don't know if it's a blind spot per se. So in those situations, in where you've got that CEO led or owner leader business, they were probably an excellent salesperson, right?
Yeah.
They were probably the first salesperson in that organization, and the business grew, the responsibilities continue to increase because of their efforts, right? They were landing business and doing really well. And at some point they decided, if we're going to keep this up, I need to add some more salespeople. And so they add those salespeople. But the problem that they had was they didn't think through I don't have a sales process because it's all in my head. I don't have an onboarding program to bring new salespeople in, get them trained on the sales process and all of that. It tends to be, depending on whether it's a product or a service, they hire somebody, they bring them in and give them some technical training on the products and services that they may provide. And then they kind of just let these people flounder a bit. Don't give them any really good direction. And unfortunately, then it just becomes almost a state of chaos because now we're adding other people. And then the thing that tends to happen is there's going to be some success. You're going to find some hero salespeople that are going to do really well. They're going to help grow the business even farther. Now that owner's responsibilities become even more diluted because of other things that they need to be taken care of in that business. And sales kind of becomes almost an afterthought. It's kind of like the last thing I'll mess with. I'm going to take care of finance. I'm going to take care of stuff that's going on in HR or operations or whatever it is. And sales kind of becomes an orphan within an organization that doesn't get the attention that it should. Until somebody looks at a financial statement and goes, "Oh, crud, where's revenue?" Okay, sales, doggone it, you all messed up, whatever, however that conversation ends up going.
Right.
But that's kind of the biggest issue.
Yeah. There's a whole strategy that should be accounted for, I believe, in most companies, specifically when it comes to sales, when it comes to transfer of knowledge. Because the point that you're talking about, you've got a guy that started the company, that's leading the company, that has everything in his mind. How do you get that out of his mind and then transfer that knowledge into somebody else that can go and essentially duplicate what the owner did? And that's really, really hard. So, if I'm an owner, my thought should be, how do I duplicate myself in sales? How do I duplicate myself in operations, in finance? Because that's how you can scale. Right. And
absolutely.
It's in that process that I think a lot of owners go through this revelation process of, you know what, this is really uncomfortable for me. I don't, not only do I not know how to transfer knowledge, but I don't trust that person because it's not me.
That's right.
So it's so interesting.
I have a client right now that I'm working with that same thing. It's a generational succession situations going on. And I really wish I had a machine that would allow me to take this owner and stick him inside, close the door, and be able to extract all of this stuff from him, right? And to be able to then put it on paper so that I can show this huge sales team that exists now. Here's a blueprint, at least for how it was successful in the past. Now,
Right.
we tweak and we do some things to it, but here's a way that has been successful in the past. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's I was talking to another company last week, and they're a very large company, foreign owned, and
Mm-hmm.
they have an operation in the U.S. And same thing, it's like how do I tap into the knowledge base that is in Europe where I can effectively train and prosper here in the U.S. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a huge strategic initiative that needs to be addressed, I think, in most companies in terms of transfer of knowledge. But
Absolutely.
anyway, all right. So what does good sales leadership actually look like inside a growing industrial company? One
Well,
that's actively growing.
yeah. So there's a few basic things, but it comes down to an ability to coach and train, mentor your salespeople, to be able to hold them accountable to whatever's been established as KPIs or metrics or goals or whatever term they're using in the organization, and to be able to identify where help's needed, to be able to say, okay, we're seeing this particular thing repeat over and over in some of your opportunities, and be able to diagnose that and then be able to provide a solution to that, to be able to coach through that and help improve that
Mm-hmm.
salesperson. Creating cadences, super, super critical. And I mean, when I do weekly team meetings, when I do one-to-ones, these are recurring appointments on our calendars. They are on the same day, same time. I mean, it's just an
Oh,
expectation, right? So
right.
that salesperson doesn't, because too many times, sales managers that maybe I'm working with, they'll be like, oh, I know what's going on, what so and so's got going on, and I'm just
Mm-hmm.
going to cancel this meeting because I got
Right.
something else I want to do.
Sure.
And man, that kills momentum,
It does.
motivation, morale quicker than anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I, I love that because and I've told this to people before that you don't have a meeting just to have a meeting, but there's a lot of value in just taking 15 minutes to sit down, and you may know everything that's going on, but let's still
Yeah.
have that dialogue that
Yeah.
we know that we're on the same page, and let's just review, because like you said, it keeps the momentum going. And to me, it kind of centers the whole process. It's like, okay, this is
Mm-hmm.
this non-negotiable time. We're going to meet together. Yeah, we know everything, but you know what? We're still going to come together and talk about it. And it's just this repetition, and it keeps it in the
Absolutely.
forefront. Yeah.
Well, and I'm even an absolute huge proponent that, so for a weekly team meeting, there's a set agenda with a
Yeah.
very laid out set of steps that we're going to go through, so that it doesn't, what can happen like in a group team meeting, and this can even happen in one-to-ones. Salespeople love to tell stories, right? And if you just give them the opportunity to say, hey, what's going on? 45 minutes later, you really didn't learn anything, unfortunately.
Right.
But yet a great story got told, and the salesperson, feels good about what they were able to say. But if you really want to get to the truth of what's going on in your sales process and in your pipeline, you have to have kind of a set uh, agenda that walks you through it, picking out the closest opportunities that we could get closed and brainstorming those, talking about the ones that maybe there's an issue with, what can we do there, and keeping the pipeline clean, right? So I've got these 3 opportunities, and they haven't moved in 90 days. I can't get a phone call answered or anything else. Why are they even in the pipeline now?
Right.
These should be gone. And those are the things that you're conversing about while you're having both the weeklies and the one-to-ones. And it just keeps everything tight, clean, and we know what we're working on.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So, what is the so let's say a company hires you. What is the first thing that you do? Do you just interview employees? I mean, what is the first thing that your company would do with a new customer?
Yeah, so for a new client onboarding, for us, it's there's kind of a questionnaire of things that I ask about, which has to do with average deal size, average cycle time, margins, just trying to get
Sure.
a an understanding of what's going on within the company financially, and then just for being able to do sales math, those are things I need to know and
Right.
understand. I want to get into the sales pipeline, get into their CRM, poke around a little bit, see what I see. Is it being used, or are there notes in here? Understand how well they're actually using the system. And then there's assessments that I use with, it can be leadership, sales management, sales people. One of them is a very sales specific assessment that looks at just sales related characteristics, ways of thinking, that kind of
Hmm.
thing. And then I also use some personality behavioral stuff to pull and interviewing. And then I pull
Right.
all that together to generate a kind of an overview of the organization, its process, its people, its team as a whole. And that's the way
Right.
an engagement would kick off.
Wow. Yeah. So let's jump into the fractional.
Mm-hmm.
This term, I think, just in the last 5 or 6 years has really become a thing. And
Yep.
so you're a fractional VP of sales, sales leader. So
Yeah.
describe for the audience, like, what does it mean by fractional?
And so fractional just is saying that not all of my time's devoted to a particular single entity. It's
Hmm.
saying for that client on their side, they would perceive this as being able to get, high level sales leadership, professional sales leadership without paying. So if we're talking about a sales manager, you could pay $150,000 a year
Right.
for that person, plus benefits, plus any bumps, bonuses, things like that you might do. And that's pretty expensive. But
Right.
fractional can come in, diagnose what's going on in the organization, set up the systems and processes, and do it for a fraction of the amount of time that it would take for having a full time staff member. Now,
Right.
um, that works within a window, right? An organization that's somewhere between maybe 5 and 50 million, 100 million. It depends on their product and what the average sale price is and things like that, how many people are on their sales team. But what ultimately does happen in a fractional engagement, or at least the way that Transformative structures them, is we get started, we figure out what we're going to do, we get it implemented, we run it for you until we get to some point where hiring a full-time VP of sales or sales manager,
Hmm.
director makes sense. And then what we do is then help you go find that person, go through the same kinds of
Hmm.
assessments and things like that to make sure we get a person that matches the culture, matches the way of thinking, the way that
Sure.
this consultative B2B sales process has been put together, help you make that hiring decision. And then once that person's hired, then we sit down with them and we transfer everything over to them. So that person doesn't have to come in and reinvent the entire wheel. They literally can come in, pick up the processes, the cadence, and we just transfer it over. So it becomes pretty transparent, or it should, for
Hmm.
leadership. They shouldn't see a ton of difference, just maybe a different face that's doing the activities, running the cadence, and then we exit out, move on to our to help our next client.
So are you actually in this fractional role? Are you customer facing to the company, meaning you're interacting with their customers, doing business development, or you're helping those within the company
Yeah,
do that?
yeah.
Okay. So you're
Typically,
providing the structure.
we don't typically get involved. I have had clients that have asked me to step into a role in a limited basis on maybe some really big deal they were working
Hmm.
on or something like that. And I'm happy to help do that. But no, typically we're working internally. We're not talking to customers, to our clients' customers. We are just helping them make uh, really good choices, think through, create strategy. We'll sit down and we'll do pre-call planning, which is
Mm-hmm.
another integral part, I think, of a good sales process, to really think through a meeting before you have it. So we'll help
Right.
them create those pre-call plans before a salesperson goes to complete, some meeting. And then we deal debrief afterwards and talk about what happened to that meeting. What did we
Right.
learn? Did we get our questions answered? Did we uncover something that we weren't expecting? And what do we need to do with that?
Right.
And so we're just sitting in the shadows trying to help guide and coach and mentor that sales team.
Yeah. Really, you're building the infrastructure for the
Yeah.
sales department, really is what you're
Yep.
doing. So it can scale later. And so you can bring in
Absolutely.
that key person. So that's
Hmm.
good stuff. So what is the typical stage where a company should start considering fractional sales leadership? Like what would you tell is like if you get to this point, you need to start looking at that? Or does it just depend
Well,
per company?
it kind of depends, but here's some general rules of thumb. So, let's say revenue has started to decline, or you've plateaued. Your goals are to continue growing, but now
Mm-hmm.
sales have come and plateaued off, or it's sliding down. You've got salespeople, like a lot of turnover in your sales organization could be an indication that there's something going on that needs to be potentially addressed. Um, and sometimes CEOs literally just they enjoy doing the sales function, but um, they're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week to get all of the things that they need to get done. And
Right.
they just need us to come in and give them back, 10 hours a week or whatever, so that they can kind of step away and then just sit. If we're talking like from an EOS standpoint, they're sitting up on a leadership L10 somewhere, and they're able to just see the metrics roll up, and they understand that what's going on in that organization is healthy and working and doing what it's supposed to, without them being, in the day to day.
Right. Hmm. So what are the warning signs that the current sales effort is not structured enough? Like what do you see?
Well, it would be so if you ever try to sit down and have a conversation with sales folks, and you start asking questions. Let's pick a deal. Let's say that they're looking into their CRM or however they're tracking opportunities, and they start asking questions, and that salesperson can't honestly give good answers, or you hear
Right.
things like, oh, we're waiting for them to decide timing, or they really like us and I got a good feeling about this. Things like that's telling you do not have a robust sales process.
Right.
You're not qualifying. You're just, it's all based on hopium, right? And it's easy to get addicted to hopium
Sure.
and try to run your organization, your sales organization that way. But if you want to have consistent, predictable revenue and understand where you're going, you've got to get rid of the addiction to hopium and get everybody running and following a process. So as you ask specific questions and you start seeing, holes in the answers, not specifics. Another great one would be, salespeople saying, "Oh yeah, this is going to be a great deal. They love us." And you ask the question, "Well, what's the next step, and when is it?" My expectation is they're going to say, "Our next conversation is to go over the proposal, and it is set for March the 3rd at noon."
Right.
And you get an answer that says, "Well, we don't have anything on the calendar yet." All
Right.
right. Well, there's a sign. Maybe there's a
Right.
problem that we
Sure.
need to address. Yeah.
Yeah. So you touched on something that I've been a consultant for 15 years now. I've run companies, been a CEO, and one of the biggest issues I've always run into is the CRM.
Yeah.
It could be that the company doesn't have a CRM. It could be that they have a CRM but they don't use it, or it could be they have a CRM, they got a new employee, they didn't train the new employee on the CRM, or there's just resistance to the CRM. Like,
Yeah.
you ask the salesman, is the CRM updated? Yeah. You go in and you see the closing dates 4 months in the past.
Yes. Yes,
So
absolutely.
what's your take on CRMs and how to use them effectively?
Yeah. A CRM is a fabulous tool when it's
Yeah.
used properly. The sales process should be completely integrated into whatever
Mm-hmm.
CRM you're using. So,
Right.
whatever your stage gates are, whatever your qualification steps are, those should be baked into that CRM. This gives a salesperson a roadmap, right, that they can
Yeah.
follow. I have qualified or at least got a lead that I've put into the system. Now I'm walking through qualifications. Here are the qualifications for this step. Okay, I can advance, so you've
Yeah.
got entrance and exit criteria that describe how an opportunity should go through. But unfortunately, CRMs get used for a few different things. They are either kind of a filing cabinet
Mm-hmm.
where an opportunity comes in, we shove it in there, we put the contact's name in there. If we're lucky, a phone number and an email might actually get loaded in, and then they just arbitrarily kind of move it through, put a close date, and then ultimately someday it'll probably get marked closed lost. But the ones that are closed won, I mean, they are in there in a New York minute, and they move those right over to closed one.
Right.
Um, but it just sits there, and and I blame sales managers or a leader in a business or an owner for not really taking that tool and making it everything it could be. And
Yeah.
then it's about accountability. It's about an expectation, a non-negotiable
Yeah.
expectation that these are the things that you've got to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And salespeople, oh, it just takes too much time, and no, it really
Yeah.
doesn't.
It
If it's
doesn't.
been designed well. Now,
Yeah.
I've seen. So I had one client that had gotten Salesforce,
Yeah.
and they just out of the box version of it. And I don't know if you've paid attention to it, but
Very much. Yeah.
my goodness, the load of things that are there
Yep.
is overwhelming, right?
Very.
And if somebody doesn't go through and customize and pull out all the garbage that we don't need and build it around the process, then it's not going to get used because it
Yeah.
becomes overwhelming,
It's
and
confusing.
it
Yeah.
is the Salesforce
Yeah.
is quite confusing in terms of
Yeah.
just the things you can. And I'm not knocking Salesforce. I use it in my company, but it's highly customized. It's
Sure.
it's built for what I need, or I've created it that
Yeah.
way. Yeah. So
Yeah. I really think with the Salesforces of the world, the HubSpots, they're missing a component of just give me a simple CRM for small
yeah,
companies that can expand over time as the company
yeah,
grows. They
yeah,
tend to throw so much at you that makes it unusable. And to your point,
yeah.
it makes it overwhelming. So salespeople don't want to do it. But I've told my salespeople before, how great would it be that you get to work in the morning, you pull up your dashboard and everything is current and it's right in front of you. You can see the phone calls, the tasks, you could see the weighted pipeline, what stage is where.
Right.
Like, wouldn't that be, just like a cockpit in an airplane? It's just all right in front of you. But it's been my experience that more people than not just kind of give it the Heisman. They just, I don't want to deal with it. But it's
Yeah,
unfortunate because it is a great tool.
it
So
is.
some owners hesitate because they think part-time equals temporary. We're talking about the fractional part.
Yeah.
How do you explain the real value of fractional leadership to an owner that might be like, I really need a full-time person? How do you distinguish that for them?
Well, we go through a conversation and we talk about what their expectations are. What do you think this full time person would be doing in this organization? And kind of help them understand that sometimes the things that you think they're going to be doing, they're not really doing. The
Right.
core important things that need to happen is that establishment and training and introduction of that sales process, and then getting the weekly meetings and that agenda and that cadence in, salespeople's one-to-ones, establishing some set of scoreboard or metrics for that salesperson to be able to hold them accountable to, and that just doesn't take 40 hours a week to do it. It just really
Right.
doesn't. Unless there's,
Right.
100 salespeople, then okay, yeah. But even one sales manager never just handles 100 salespeople.
Right.
So it comes down to you're just at a size that doesn't make sense to bring in that additional overhead because there honestly isn't the need for that much. And then the opposite to that is, oh, maybe I'll bring in somebody that can do that and this. Like, no, I don't think you want to do that either. Because
Right.
what happens in those situations are people gravitate to what they enjoy doing most. So let's
Yeah.
say we bring in a guy or a gal and we're going to make them the sales manager and the marketing person.
Right.
Okay. And their background actually is more in marketing than it is with
Right.
sales.
Right.
A lot of people will tell you marketing people will act as if they can run a sales group, but unfortunately, those are unique people.
Yeah.
But they come into the organization and now they're going to help with getting sales going and they're going to take care of marketing. Their background's primarily marketing, and that's what they enjoy doing the most. What do you think they're going to go do?
Yeah. They absolutely gravitate towards that. Yep.
They're going to do marketing. And then
Yeah.
there's going to be some set of metrics and quotas that person has on the marketing side.
Right.
And they're going to work to get those. Now, they should have some of the same things on the sales side, but they're still going to gravitate to what is comfortable, what they know, that kind of thing. So that's kind of how we go through it. And then sometimes people just don't. They just like, I got to have a full-time person here. All right, well, that's fine. The expectation is that you're going to spend this much money to do that. And if you engage us to do what needs to be done, that's it. What needs to be done, you're a third to a half the cost per year.
Right.
So
Right.
no benefits, no healthcare, none of those other things play in. And the way we structure things, they're in short increments. So if we get to a point that it doesn't make sense for an owner, then it's like, all right, we're at the end of the engagement and we're going to wind this down. And they're not stuck with a year-long contract or all of
Right.
these other things that could be involved. Where, okay, I hired this sales manager and it isn't quite working out, and I'm going to have to let him go. Now I got unemployment. All of those other things
Yeah.
that are just costly.
Yeah. That's a great point. So, Anthony, we're getting towards the end here.
Oh, darn.
Two questions. I know it went fast. So, what realistically can a fractional, sales leader accomplish within 90 days? Like, what is, if you're to lay out a 90-day plan for a customer, like what's the realistic items that you can get accomplished in that first 90 days?
By the end of 90 days, I fully expect to see a cadence in place, right?
Okay.
We've done the assessments. We've potentially started some kind of a training program. I have an online sales academy that I use for training of salespeople. That's been implemented and started. We're starting to do our one-to-ones. All of the meeting agendas are set. All of this is scheduled. We're already having those meetings. Scorecards are in place. So at the end of 90 days, what we should see is roughly 90% of what that sales process system is going to look like and how it's going to operate. Now,
Right.
you've always got to be looking and thinking and wondering about what tweaks should we make to fix this or fix that, or issues that we see. So you make some adjustments. But at the end of 90 days, you should see, 90% of the sales process in place and running. Now, does that mean revenue is doubled? No. But does that mean we're seeing more highly qualified opportunities into the pipeline and things like that? Absolutely. There should be some set of measurables that you can look at and go, oh yeah, all right. I can see the swell in the ocean starting to move towards land. And now we're just pushing to get it there.
Yeah. And I would add to that with bringing somebody in like you're actually putting the company in a position where it can practically and actually grow. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of businesses out there that they really think that, let's say they're doing, $3 million a year. Well, the jump from 3 million to 5 million is significant. That's not
It
just
is.
something that can just happen. And if you don't have a structure, an infrastructure in place to scale, you're never going to get it, no matter how hard you work, no matter how many salespeople you hire, because it's going to crumble upon itself.
Yep.
And so what I hear you saying is that you position the company where it can actually physically, mentally, emotionally grow.
Yeah.
You're positioning it in that way.
I mean, that's my ultimate goal at the end is when I leave an organization, I want it to be in a stable position that is capable of scaling if that's what they're choosing to do. Not everybody does. I mean, some are just happy, doing what they're doing and being able to continue to just tread that water. And, that's fine. But when I leave, that is exactly where that company is. They're in a position that they can build upon what we've helped them create and continue to grow.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Anthony, thank you for your time. This went by really fast.
I am shocked that it's already over, to be honest.
We're 40 minutes in already. So where can listeners find out more about you and your services?
All right. Well, if folks are interested, they can go to the website, transformativesalessystems.com, all together, one word. You can find me on LinkedIn, Anthony Nix. Also, you can find the company there as well. If you're interested into some of our content we put out, I have a podcast called the Selling Point Podcast.
Okay.
You can find that on Apple, iHeart, Spotify. Most platforms carry that. Or you can just give me a call if you're okay. I'll give my phone number.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you can call the office here at 812-924-7085. And we'd be happy and privileged to have a conversation.